My stepdaughter accused me of living off their family. I pulled the funds, shut the accounts, and stepped into my own life. Turns out the real parasite was whoever knew how to survive. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now, let's get started. I was 41 when I married Molly. An engineer, practical, predictable, a man who believed that if you built something carefully enough, it wouldn't fall apart. My job was clean lines, precise tolerances. Things either worked or they didn't. I thought family could be the same. If I just kept tightening bolts, patching leaks, reinforcing weak spots, I believed it would hold. Molly came with 2 children. Logan, 15, and Haley, 13. Their father, Derek, was a ghost with a car. He showed up once a year in a truck that coughed oil and exhaust, always wearing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He brought gifts that beeped or glittered, left promises that expired faster than the batteries in his presence. The kids loved him in the way only children can love a disappointment. Fiercely, blindly, always hoping for next time. And me? I stepped in where he stepped out. Quietly, carefully. I didn't try to win them over. I didn't demand a title. I knew better. I showed up with groceries, repaired the back fence, fixed the flickering porch light. I drove them to school, paid for their field trips, taught Logan how to change a tire. When Haley got her first period and locked herself in the bathroom crying, it was me who knocked softly on the door with a box of supplies and a voice low enough not to scare her. I didn't just move into their lives. I became the foundation under them. And like all good foundations, I was meant to be invisible. Molly noticed. First, she used to grab my hand in the kitchen and whisper, "Thank you for holding us together." Her voice would catch and I would believe her. She said I was the kind of man she never thought she'd find after Derek. Someone solid. Someone who wouldn't break things just to feel powerful. But gratitude has a half-life in families like ours. It doesn't survive long against the erosion of routine. Over the years, my role changed from savior to fixture. From new light to steady lamp. Reliable, dull. There was no more gratitude in her eyes, just expectation. I stopped hearing thank you. I started hearing, can you take Logan to practice? Can you help Haley with her science project? Can you pick up eggs? And I always said yes. I said yes when Logan wanted to join a private wrestling camp that cost more than our mortgage. I said yes when Haley insisted on the latest laptop because everyone else at school has one. I said yes when Molly wanted to take a family trip to Hawaii and Derek suddenly stopped returning her calls about pitching in. The money flowed, and it flowed from me. Derek was a rumor by then, a background hum of failure. He hadn't paid child support in years. He sent birthday texts instead of gifts. The kids mocked him openly, but still lit up when his name appeared on their phones. He was the fantasy. I was the reality. Reality pays for braces. Fantasy gets likes on Instagram. The kids never called me dad. Not once. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself it was enough that they had a roof, that they had shoes, that they had someone who showed up. I built college funds. I paid for therapy sessions when Haley started having panic attacks in sophomore year. I replaced Logan's car door after he sideswiped a hydrant and begged me not to tell his mother. And still, I was the background noise. The man who refilled the fridge. The man who never raised his voice. The man who kept the lights on. It was during Haley's junior year that Molly asked me to put the house in all our names. It would make them feel safe, she said. Like they belong. I had already paid for the house. Every brick, every shingle, every cent. But I nodded. I paid the fees. I added their names to the deed. I told myself it was what love looked like. Giving without needing recognition. Sacrifice without applause. Looking back now, I see it for what it was. It was a man quietly digging his own grave and calling it a garden. Molly would still smile at parties and tell people, "Andrew's the perfect stepdad." She said it like a punchline, like a joke everyone was in on but me. The kids would smirk when she said it. Logan would look away. Haley would roll her eyes. I pretended not to notice. I was good at that by then. After all, what else was I going to do? Leave? I had invested too much. My time, my money, my name, my soul. So I stayed. I stayed through every cold shoulder, every unspoken resentment, every time I walked into a room and watched the conversation die. I stayed through the birthdays where Derek's name got mentioned more than mine, through the holidays where his empty chair felt heavier than my full presence. I stayed because I believed families were built, not inherited. I stayed because I thought effort would be enough. I stayed until the day it wasn't. Derek moved back to town the summer before Logan's senior year. No warning. No explanation. One day he was a voice on speakerphone, breaking another promise. The next, he was leaning against a new pickup in our driveway like he belonged there, grinning like time had forgiven him. He brought gifts. Again. Expensive this time. Designer shoes, smartwatches, a drone for Logan that word and blinked and hovered over the front lawn while the neighbors stared. Haley got a perfume set and a necklace with her birthstone. Neither of them asked where he got the money. Neither cared. They posted photos of the loot on Instagram, tagged with hashtag finally reunited and hashtag MurielDad, hashtags sharp enough to bleed. Molly showed me the posts, laughing nervously as if to say, kids, right? I stared at the screen and said nothing. At dinner that night, Logan couldn't stop talking about Derek's new job. He's working at this custom auto shop now, real high-end stuff. He says he'll help me with my car, maybe even get me a better one. I nodded, chewing slowly. That's good. He said we'll go camping this fall. Just the three of us. I swallowed the bitterness with my bite. Sounds like a nice trip. Haley chimed in. He's taking us to Topgolf next weekend. Said it's time we made up for lost time. Then, without looking at me, she added, he's actually fun. Molly sipped her wine, eyes fixed on the centerpiece, not the kids. It went on like that. Day after day, story after story. Derek was cool. Derek was laid back. Derek understood. Derek didn't make them do chores. Derek didn't remind them about college deadlines or sleep schedules or responsibilities. Derek showed up like a flash of light and made me look like a shadow. And they leaned into it. Hard. I became the obstacle. The wet blanket. The killjoy. You're always so serious. You never let us do anything. Derek says you stress too much. At first, it was little things. Haley rolling her eyes when I asked her to turn off lights. Logan muttering under his breath when I asked him to mow the lawn. Then it sharpened. They started calling him Dad again. In front of me. With emphasis. Dad said he'll take us shopping. Dad's picking us up this weekend. Dad thinks you should chill out. They didn't say stepdad anymore. Didn't say Andrew. Just nothing. I faded. Molly noticed. Of course she did. But her silences stretched longer, heavier. She avoided conflict like it might rot her teeth. When I brought it up, she waved it off. They're just excited. It's the honeymoon phase. It'll fade. But it didn't fade. Calcified. By Thanksgiving, Derek was a fixture again. He came to dinner, sat at my table, ate the food I paid for, told stories I wasn't part of. Logan laughed like he'd been starved for his voice. Haley watched him like he hung the moon. After dessert, Derek clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. You've done a great job, man, he said. Seriously, holding it all together. I just looked at him. He smelled like expensive cologne and cheap forgiveness. Molly hovered behind him, cheeks flushed, as if she needed me to play nice. And I did. I smiled. I nodded. I passed him the leftovers I had cooked. But something cracked inside me that night. And then came the moment. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Unremarkable. We were eating takeout around the table. Logan had just gotten back from hanging with Dad. Haley was scrolling her phone under the table. I asked them both politely to put their phones down. Haley looked up, deadpan. Why? We're not even talking. Logan snorted. I set my fork down. It's just a request. Be present at the table. That's all. Haley folded her arms. You're not even our real family. Molly froze. Logan, emboldened, muttered, yeah, you're just the guy who married Mom. Haley's voice sharpened. Derek's our real dad. You're just here. I looked to Molly. She said nothing. Not a word. Not even a whisper. She stared down at her plate like it had answers I didn't. Then Haley, sweet, shy Haley, leaned back in her chair and said something I'll never forget. You're leeching off our family, and we're tired of pretending you matter. Leeching. I had paid for her braces, her phone, her therapy, her violin lessons, her goddamn prom dress. And now I was the parasite. I waited. I gave Molly one last chance to say something, to correct them, to pull the emergency brake on what her children were becoming. She stayed silent. Logan piled on. At least Derek makes money for us. You do your little engineer job for yourself. You're not building our life. You're just paying to stay here. The room tilted. Something in me went still. The part that had stayed patient. The part that had made excuses. The part that still believed effort could buy belonging. It died. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a plate. I didn't cry. I looked each of them in the eye, Haley, Logan, Molly, and I said, calmly, thank you for the clarity. Logan raised an eyebrow. What the hell does that mean? I didn't answer. I just pushed in my chair and walked away. Upstairs, in the bedroom I furnished, I sat at my desk and wrote a note. It was short, cold, legalistic. Molly, \n greater than I heard everything. And more importantly, I heard nothing from you. I'm done being the silent backbone of a family that wants me invisible. You let them speak for you. So now I'll speak for myself. \n. I'm leaving. And I'm taking back what's mine. \n, Andrew. I left it on the nightstand. I slept in the guest room. The next morning, before anyone woke, I began. I called the bank. Transferred every shared account into one under my name. Legal because the money had always been mine. I stopped the autopay on their credit cards. Froze every account they used for groceries, gas, allowances. Canceled their phone lines. Shut down the streaming services. Removed my name from the utilities. Called my lawyer about the deed. I listed the house. Within 48 hours, the parasite had removed the plumbing from the home. I left a week later. No dramatic goodbye. No packed bags in the hallway. I left a note on the fridge with the realtor's info and the timeline. They would need to find a new place. I rented a small apartment just outside the city. Bare walls. Quiet hallways. No pictures on the fridge. No dinner conversations to police. Just silence. Glorious, guiltless silence. They called. First Molly. Then Haley. Then Logan reluctantly. I didn't answer. They texted. We didn't mean it. Can we talk? You're being dramatic. Please come back. I didn't reply. Because now, finally, they were speaking to me. Too late. The morning after I left, the house woke up hollow. Molly found the letter on the fridge and called me 5 times before noon. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, each one shorter than the last. The first sounded like confusion. The second, panic. By the 5th, her voice was cold. Flat. Call me back, Andrew. We need to talk. No, Molly. We didn't. Not anymore. I sat in my new apartment, a modest 1-bedroom with peeling linoleum and walls the color of wet bone, and stared out the window. The view was nothing. Parking lot, a strip mall. But it was mine. No one would glare at me for asking them to clean up. No one would tell me I didn't belong in my own home. No one would call me a leech while wearing shoes I paid for. The silence was surgical, clean, and I needed that kind of silence. That week, I finished the unraveling. I called the insurance company, canceled all joint policies. No more health, dental, or vision coverage on my plan for anyone not named Andrew. I severed every subscription, every shared login, every quiet tether I had tied between myself and their comfort. Then I went for the jugular. The tuition accounts. I had opened one for Logan and one for Haley, each under my name. Over the years, I fed them like sacred fires. Every bonus, every side project, every unspent holiday check, into those accounts. College had been the one promise I'd made without ever saying it aloud. You won't have to struggle the way I did. I'll see to that. But they had spoken clearly. I was not their father. So I closed the accounts, pulled every dollar back into my personal savings. I didn't spend it. I didn't touch a cent. I just took it away from them. A quiet subtraction, the way a teacher erases a name from the board after a child spits in her face. And the day I did that, the calls came harder. Why is Logan's tuition payment rejected? Molly snapped into my voicemail. He got an email from the school. Do you understand what that means? I did. I understood perfectly. I didn't reply. Then came Logan's message. You can't just bail. I already registered for classes. What am I supposed to do now? I deleted it. Haley sent a text. Did you really cancel our phone plans? Yes, Haley. I did. Are you trying to ruin everything? No, Haley. You did that all on your own. Molly emailed me next. Long paragraphs full of spin. I know the kids were out of line. I was shocked too. I should have said something. But please, Andrew, don't let a bad moment destroy everything we've built. They're teenagers. They lash out. That's what they do. It wasn't personal. But it was personal. And it wasn't just a moment. It was years. It was the erosion of respect, grain by grain, while I told myself to be patient. It was her silence at the dinner table while her daughter called me a parasite. It was Logan's smirk. Haley's entitlement. Molly's cowardice. I didn't respond. They didn't stop. The bank transfers they'd grown used to? Gone. Haley's phone pinged with a balance of 0. Logan's gas card failed at the pump. Their Netflix account locked them out mid-movie. The Wi-Fi glitched, and no one was on the line to call the provider. I imagined them sitting in that house, my house, realizing that everything they had mistaken for a birthright was just one man's tired, generous hand. And now that hand had closed. By week 2, the facade began to crack. Molly emailed again. I spoke to Derek. He says he'll help where he can, but you know how unreliable he is. Andrew, please, don't punish the kids like this. I laughed out loud. The first time I'd laughed in months. Derek, the man who vanished for a decade and strolled back in with a drone and a hashtag. The man they called their real dad. Let him carry the burden now. He lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of scrambling, of being asked to do what I had done for nearly a decade. He told Molly he couldn't just snap his fingers and come up with tuition money. Said he was getting back on his feet. Blamed the economy, his job, his ex. He forgot that the man he replaced had kept the lights on during a recession, had worked double shifts, had maxed out cards and slept in his car for 3 nights when a deadline overran and the heater broke. He forgot because he'd never known. And Molly? She began to unravel. I heard it in the tone of her messages. The anger gave way to pleading. The arrogance dried up. Please just talk to me. We're behind on the mortgage now. I can't keep doing this without help. The realtor says the market's soft. We might have to take a loss. Can we meet? I said nothing. Then came the letter. A real one. Ink on paper. No emojis. No hashtags. Andrew, \n greater than I know you won't pick up the phone, and I understand. I deserve that. But please, read this. I need you to know what's happening. Logan's dropped out of school for now. He's working construction with a friend's dad. Says it's temporary. Haley's looking for work. She had to cancel her early admissions interview. I've been applying to jobs, but nothing stable yet. I underestimated what you were holding together. We all did. \n greater than I want to apologize. Not just for the kids, but for me. For standing there and letting it happen. For letting you carry the weight and never backing you up. I was weak. I didn't want to be the bad guy. So I let you be the invisible one. \n greater than I understand now. You weren't leeching off us. \n. We were bleeding you dry. \n greater than I miss you. I miss what we had. I miss the man who held the roof up while the rest of us threw stones. \n. If you never want to speak to me again, I'll understand. But if there's even a small corner of your heart that remembers love, please, let me see you. Let me say thank you to your face. \n Molly. I read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it in the drawer with the others. Not because it moved me, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They needed me, and they had destroyed the one thing they couldn't live without. Trust. Love can be rebuilt. Trust cannot. Not once it's cracked. Not once the people you fed, clothed, protected, looked you in the eye and called you a parasite. Not once your wife, the woman who watched you work 2 jobs to keep her children warm, stayed silent while her daughter humiliated you at your own table. Some betrayals you walk away from, others you grow away from, and that's what I was doing now. Growing. Away from the people who mistook my kindness for a blank check. Away from the children who thought calling me not real made their real father any less of a fraud. Away from a woman who let convenience silence her conscience. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was clear. Clarity is colder than rage, sharper than grief. It doesn't burn. Cuts. And it cut me free. I got a new phone number, changed my email, opened a new bank account, started taking weekend trips, museums, lakes, concerts in the park. I met people who called me Andrew instead of that guy who pays for everything. I met a woman at a hardware store, Stephanie. Divorced. 2 kids, grown and gone. She didn't flinch when I said I didn't speak to my ex-family. She just nodded and said, "Some people don't deserve to be carried." She understood. I didn't fall in love. Not yet. But I did remember what it felt like to be looked at with curiosity, not contempt. And that was enough. One afternoon, I passed through the old neighborhood. I didn't mean to, just took a wrong turn after a doctor's appointment. But there it was, the house. My house. Peeling paint. Overgrown lawn. A for sale sign crooked in the yard. Molly on the porch with a cigarette, staring out like she was watching something disappear. She saw me. Her eyes widened. She stood. But I didn't stop. I drove past without even tapping the brake. She called out. I didn't roll down the window, because what was there to say? Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to carry. They had their real father now. Let him pay the next bill. I didn't expect to feel peace. Not really. I had carried too much for too long. You don't come out of that clean. You come out bent, hollowed, a little smaller than before. But when I walked through the front door of my apartment each night and no one asked me for money, no one rolled their eyes, no one tossed contempt like crumbs across the dinner table, I realized peace doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives in silence. I had silence now. In the mornings, I drank coffee without bracing for a tantrum. In the evenings, I read books without pausing to fix someone's disaster. I no longer existed to mop up messes I didn't make. I no longer needed to apologize for existing too loudly, too plainly, too inconveniently. Some nights, I'd find myself staring at my phone, not out of longing, out of instinct. I'd scroll through photos I hadn't deleted. Logan at 14 holding up a wrestling trophy I paid for. Haley in her prom dress, smiling like the world had already been promised to her. I thought about deleting them, but I didn't. I wanted to remember, not because I missed them, because I needed to remind myself what happens when you give too much to people who only take. 3 months after I left, the house sold. Molly got less than she wanted. A soft market, the realtor told her. Deferred maintenance. Poor curb appeal. The house had always looked nicer when I was there to fix the cracks, patch the siding, mow the lawn. Without me, it aged faster than expected. She moved into a rental on the edge of town. Logan stayed in the basement. He was still working construction, part-time now after a back injury on site. He hadn't gone back to college. His old coach had tried to get him into a program out of state, but without me co-signing the loans, it never happened. Haley was working evenings at a cafe near the university. She'd deferred her admission. Gap year, she called it on social media. Personal growth. But the truth was simpler. She couldn't afford the dorms, and Derek had stopped returning calls again. He ghosted them faster this time. Less guilt, fewer promises. Once the bills started showing up, he faded like a watermark under rain. Just like before, just like always, I watched from afar. Friends in the neighborhood still spoke to me quietly. One of them, Janice, the woman across the street with the tulips, Texted me a photo of the house one afternoon. Looks like the parasite took the light with him. They look miserable. She wasn't wrong. They looked tired, worn, like people who'd finally realized the scaffolding was gone, and the house they mocked was collapsing without it. One afternoon, I saw them in person. Not by design. I was leaving the grocery store. Saturday, mid-October, just past sunset. The air was sharp, cold enough to bite. I pushed my cart toward the car when I heard them. Haley's voice rising, clipped and annoyed. They were arguing. All three. Molly in a faded hoodie, hair pulled back, face pale. Logan in work boots, limping slightly, snapping at his mother. Haley holding a grocery bag like it weighed more than her. They didn't see me. Not right away. I paused. Watched them load discount items into a used sedan with mismatched doors. Watched the frustration in their hands, their movements, their silence. And then Logan turned. His eyes found mine. He froze. I didn't look away. He did. Haley looked next. Her face crumpled into something between guilt and disbelief. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She nudged her mother, whispering something. Molly turned last. When she saw me, her shoulders sagged. Not from shame. From recognition. From memory. She took a step forward like she might speak. But I turned. I got in my car. Drove away. I didn't need to hear their apologies. Because the weight had already shifted. They weren't the same people anymore. They weren't arrogant. They weren't sure of their safety. They weren't riding the high of some fantasy father who could save them with stories and hashtags. They were just people now. Bruised. Tired. Real. And I was free. A week later, an envelope arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. I almost tossed it. But something in me wanted to see how far the fall had gone. Inside was a letter. No greeting. No closer. Just lines in shaky cursive. You were right. We failed you. I let them believe love didn't have rules. That you were the bottomless well and they could drink forever. I thought patience was strength. But silence isn't patience. It's cowardice. I'm sorry I didn't speak. I'm sorry I didn't stop them. You deserved better. And we deserved the loss. No signature. I burned it. Not out of rage. Out of finality. Some wounds don't need closure. They need air. And time. I didn't need Molly's apology. I didn't need Logan's regret or Haley's tears. I didn't want them to beg. I wanted them to remember. To remember the man who paid for everything. To remember the man who asked only for basic respect. To remember the man they erased. And maybe, if life was kind, they'd carry that lesson into the next time someone tried to love them. But that was no longer my burden. I started traveling. Small trips at first. Day drives. Weekend hikes. Then longer stays, Airbnbs by the coast, mountain cabins, desert hostels. Places where no one knew me. Where no one expected anything. I met people who asked questions because they wanted to know me. Not because they needed something. And I answered. Not with shame. Not with bitterness. Just truth. I had been a stepfather. I had done my best. And it wasn't enough. But I had survived. Rebuilt. Returned to myself. And that had to be enough. Sometimes, I'd sit by a campfire alone and whisper the words no one ever said to me. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for paying the bills. Thank you for being there when their father wasn't. Thank you for staying as long as you did. Because those words mattered. Even if I had to say them myself. And now I live in a world without echoes. Where every kindness I give is mine to give. Where no one confuses generosity for obligation. Where I am not a ghost in my own life. Where I am not a leech. Not a wallet. Not a stand-in. I am just me. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I wrong to stop feeding mouths that called me nothing? Was I wrong to finally say, enough? Or would you have stayed longer? Would you have kept pouring, even as the cup shattered? Tell me, because every man has a limit. I just finally reached mine.